Selamat Merdeka to all Malaysians. I hope you're having an amazing day, because if you're having an amazing day, why, I'm having an amazing day. And if I'm having an amazing day, you should be having an amazing day, and my ancestors are also having an amazing day. Are you having an amazing day? Of course you are, because it's Merdeka, 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 ia pasti menjadi sejarah. Tanggal 31 bulan 8 57. Merdeka, Merdeka, tetaplah merdeka, ia pasti menjadi sejarah. Around 300 to 400 years ago, a rough, sunburned Chinese sailor man arrived on these shores. Without a penny in his pocket, without any intention of going back to China, this man knew that this land would be his home. This man entered the kampung, the village. He did not speak their language, but he knew how to say thank you in his own. He embraced the kampung, and the kampung embraced him. He married a local lady, and his descendants would come to be known as Baba and Nyonya. My ancestor was not a traitor. My ancestor was a brave man who weathered the storms of the sea, pushed forward to where no one had gone before, and made a new life in a new world that no one had dared to go to. My ancestor did not cling to his Chinese identity like a life raft. He did not lose his roots. He built new roots on this land, and therefore my ancestor was a proto-Malaysian. He reciprocated the love and respect to the soil that embraced him. The other day, somebody told me that I should blame him for not passing down his dialect to me. Yes, apparently I should blame my sailorman ancestor for not passing down the Chinese language to me. And that's why I don't speak Chinese today. You know, very sad. Boo, 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 boo. But in reality, my ancestor freed me from the weight of dead generations that weighs upon the living's brains like a nightmare, by cutting ties with China and creating a new identity with new roots, with no obligation to dead generations or the old world. My ancestor freed me from diasporic anxiety. So I thank my ancestor for making that brave step of cutting ties with the Central Kingdom. And today I speak to you as a Peranakan second, but a Malaysian first. I consider myself deeply patriotic to this country, even though it may not be perfect, as no country is. And the other day, I was deeply, deeply hurt and deeply upset by some irresponsible commenter who said that we should always think about Plan B to migrate, because this country will always be controlled by the Muslims. That's what the fellow said. But the reality is this. This commenter not only hurt many Malay Muslims who were deeply upset by the ingratitude of his tone, it also hurt me, a Peranakan, deeply when I read this comment. Because I have to remind you first and foremost that I did not come in the 19th century. I did not come in the 20th century. I came in the 1600s to 1700s, in a manner of speaking, figuratively. My people were already living when yours came to make a living. And it was not only on the good graces of the Malay leaders, such as the Malay sultans, but also the Peranakan, the Baba Nyonya moral class. People like Tan Cheng Lock, who put in a good word for the ancestors of these people in order for them to get jus soli, or citizenship by birth. It was a Peranakan leader, Datuk Tan Cheng Lock, who ensured that the new arrivals who came here in the 19th and 20th century with the British would get jus soli, because he had the Sultan's and the Malays' ear. You know, a lot of people these days do not realize the historical magnanimity that was laid out by our Malay brothers and sisters, regardless of imperfectly designed policy, such as the Bumiputra policies, which have no doubt hurt working class Chinese and Indians in an attempt to safeguard the rights of the Malays and prevent them from becoming second-class citizens on their own soil. The Malays instituted these policies, which were known as Bumiputra policies, which means they would have affirmative action, quotas, special rights, and while these policies have certainly uplifted many Malays and prevented them from falling into deep and dire poverty, we can acknowledge that they have indeed harmed the Chinese and Indian working class, because these people are denied scholarships and denied places in UiTM, and it can be very, very frustrating for these people. These policies arose as a result of certain people who arrived in Malaya who refused to integrate, who insisted on parallel structures, and basically refused to share one common national system with everyone else. I think you know to what I am alluding, right? So Ketuanan Melayu is basically a reaction, not something that arose out of thin air, but a reaction to make sure the Malays would not be sidelined in their own country. Now you can debate whether these policies were overall beneficial or harmful, but I think, you know, they certainly did not arise out of thin air, even if they have harmed the non-Malay working class, and they have indeed enabled a strata of wealthy Malays to reproduce their class position, like, for example, Datuk's children, taking advantage of Bumiputra quotas and university placements meant for poor Malays. But let us not pretend that these policies just arose out of thin air in a desire to punish the minorities. But that's just one tip of the iceberg, you see. You see, there are many people in this country who've never even needed these policies in the first place, you know, who live in gated communities, who live first-class lifestyles, who've never been to a kampong, a village, where people struggle to get basic amenities, and they have the cheek to feel disadvantaged in this country. And they have the cheek to feel like victims in this country. Structurally, they might be, but in their actual day-to-day life, they have the protection of the clan hall, they have the protection of their guanxi, and they have the protection of their own cables. So they don't actually need Bumiputra policies, although it would be nice if affirmative action were needs-based rather than race-based. But the point is, this country is not perfect. Policy was not implemented fairly, it was not implemented perfectly, and you could argue that you could even go so far as to say that it was implemented incompetently. But you cannot deny the fact that overall, despite the imperfect government, despite the race-based policies, despite the raving Malay nationalists who tell the pendatang to go back to China, even though I won't deny that there are also Chinese chauvinist community leaders who are pouring oil into the fire with their own chauvinism and arrogance. Malaysia, I have to tell you, despite its many problems, is overall a decent country. I am going to get a lot of hate for saying this, but yes, we are a decent country. Between Malaysia and Singapore, we were the first country to end the mandatory death penalty. But nobody gave it any credit when it was due, because people, especially liberals, are so prejudiced against this country. They cannot give it any damn credit when it's due. But you know, Malaysia is a country that is still a young country. You don't plant a seed and expect it to grow into a tree overnight. Malaysia is only 62 years old. It is not 68 years old. It is not 100 years old. It is not 500 years old. Malaysia as a nation is only about 60 over years old. It still will endure its teething pains. And teething pains are normal in any developing nation. But overall, any fair-minded person, I believe, would give Malaysia at least a B. You know, not a C or a D. Because despite the fact that Malaysia is an imperfect country with imperfectly implemented policies and, you know, urban and rural poverty that needs to be alleviated, no doubt. That's why we have the concept of socialism. I think that any fair-minded person would regard Malaysia overall to be a decent country. Now, on the topic of what it means to be Malaysian, well, I think my sailorman ancestor, the rough, sunburned gentleman who came here 300 to 400 years ago, encapsulated what it meant to be Malaysian. He did not demand that the village bend to his ways. He did not demand that the village speak his language, and he certainly did not demand that the Chinese language become an official language of Malaysia. My sailorman ancestor embraced the village, and the village embraced him. Before you ask, why does Malaysia not embrace me? And I'm not excusing the right-wing fascist ethno-nationalists who tell all of us to go back to China or go back to India. I'm talking about Malaysia in general. If you say, why does Malaysia not embrace me? Why does Malaysia not like me? I know that this is more than just a creature comforts concern, because even minorities who are living well, who have never needed affirmative action, who have never needed a place in a public university or scholarship, are still feeling unwelcome in this country. Well, I, Ababa, have never felt unwelcome by general, normal Malays. Perhaps you should ask yourself, do I love this country as much as I expect this country to love me? See, loving this country also means loving this country despite its imperfections. And it also means to acknowledge that even though they may not be saints, nobody are saints. The Chinese are not saints, the Malays are not saints, the Indians are not saints. The Malays may not be saints, but what they did at the time when the British left behind a cohort of thousands upon thousands of stateless people in the wake of colonization, what the sultans did was to open up this land to them and give them automatic citizenship. This is not something that you normally hear of in most countries. In many countries, citizenship is not just granted automatically by being born in a land. No matter what you may think of rotten Malaysian politicians of all streaks in this day and age, you cannot deny that this act was an incredibly profound act of generosity, because they did not have to. The sultans did not have to open up the land and give citizenship to the people of this land who had been left behind by the British. I was already part of this land before you guys even came. I was here for hundreds of years, but the sultans, the Malay leaders, they did not have to give citizenship to those people, but they did. The only condition that they laid out was respect the ways and the values of the Malays, and be a good neighbor. In many other countries, like the United States of America, the conditions would have been a lot stricter. They would have expected a lot more of you. So even if, you want to talk about the imperfect and jagged history of this country, any honest historical analyst will have to admit the magnanimous nature of the Malays in giving citizenship to these new arrivals, and to the Peranakans for helping to negotiate citizenship for them. So that's why I said it hurts me a lot when I see individuals like this fellow who are probably living a good life in a gated community complaining about how they don't like Malaysia and they're planning to leave, instead of trying to fix Malaysia. Because the implied meaning is that, Malaysia has no future. The people of this country have no future, and the people who are too poor to leave have no future, and, well, that's too bad for them. But we have a future, so we will go. Because if you can migrate to a Western country, then you are already in a privileged strata of society. And I think that if you're in a privileged strata of society, it falls upon you, the obligation falls upon you to uplift the rest of the community that has helped you to attain your status. People always ask, why are we called pendatang? And the label stings, doesn't it? In fact, I'm not condoning any right-wing Malay fascists for using the word pendatang, or for calling anyone an immigrant if their family has been here for 4 or 5 or even 3 generations or less, if they are Malaysian. But I am saying that the label also did not spring up out of thin air. It's not because some Malays decided to be mean towards foreigners. But rather, I'd like you to put yourself in the mind of someone else outside your community and imagine how it must feel to be mocked on your own land, to be called lazy, incompetent, and to be told that the Chinese language is more important than the Malay language, even though it was on your good graces that you allowed the ancestors of these people doing the mocking to stay here. Don't you feel a sense of betrayal? Because I am not Malay, but I too feel a sense of betrayal when I see Chinese diaspora people in Malaysia saying, adapt or die. Learn Mandarin if you want a job. Don't be a crybaby. Or when I see ethnic minorities doing that sort of thing, well, it hurts my feelings as well. Not because I get called a banana. I get called a banana all the damn time. I'm sort of immune to that line of attack. But it hurts my feelings because it activates a sense of betrayal in my heart, because it was also in the good graces of my Peranakan forebears that you people were allowed to stay here in the first place. And so it feels like you are spitting on the hand that fed you, basically, when you mock your benefactors who allowed your ancestors to stay. But I'm not saying that you ought to kowtow to the Malays or to the Peranakans and say, thank you, you are the masters and we are the slaves. It's not what I'm saying. But I think some basic respect would be nice. You know, you don't have to actually become Malay or become Peranakan, but I do think that some basic respect for the custodians of this land would be nice. Yes. You know, I love saying this, but I always say, mau ubah negara ini, ubah diri dulu. That means if you want to change this country, you should change yourself first. Don't expect the country to change if you do not change. For example, you can't demand a fair and humane and compassionate country if you are mocking Indians as apu nene, you're mocking Malays as lazy, and you're mocking Peranakans as bananas. Don't expect a country to suddenly become good and progressive if you are not a good example to set for the country to go forward. So, how is one a good Malaysian, in my opinion? Well, let me show you someone who is the most Malaysian person in my life. The most Malaysian person is my grandmother, Madam Ruby Go, who was a teacher. Now, she was not rich. She did not speak 5 languages, and she certainly did not own a clan hall or a business. But she was well respected and well accepted by those around her, because she showed up and she did not come with conditions. She did not say, kowtow to my culture and learn Baba Malay first, then we talk. No, she embraced all people of all races, cultures and religions without conditions. And that is why I continue to be patriotic to this country, because even though Malaysia is a very imperfect country, it's an imperfectly beautiful country that I continue to strive for, because I do not believe that Malaysia is without hope, as long as people like my grandmother continue to exist. So look at her, a Malaysian before Malaysia, comfortable among people of all backgrounds. That should be the template for everyone to follow, but for some reason it's really hard. And people like to put all the blame on the Malays by saying the Malays are close-minded, the Malays don't want to mix around. Really? Really? How many times have I seen on forums people saying that if you don't speak Chinese, I won't be your friend or I won't give you a job? How many times have you seen Indians being denied rental property or mocked as apu nene or things like that? Come on, you're lying if you think this doesn't exist. What I am saying is that before you want to attempt to take the speck of dust out of your Malay brother's eye, perhaps you should take the plank that blinds your own out first. My grandmother, okay, was not a person I could possibly emulate, because let me tell you that she is the sort of person who would put kueh on a plate and say, come, sit down, let's talk, what's bothering you? But I'm not my grandmother. I'm a lot more hot-tempered than she was. She was not hot-tempered. She was a very sweet lady. She taught 3 generations of Malaysians, by the way. And she did not come with conditions. She embraced everyone and treated other people's children as her own children. And that, to me, is an example of what all Malaysians should strive to be. Yeah, I'm not my grandmother. I'm not the sort of person who'll say, come, sit down, have some Angku Kueh, let's talk about it. No, I'll tell you, if you disrespect me, that you need to sit down and shut up and be disciplined like an ill-behaved dog. But hey, I'm also learning. I too am trying to be better, okay? I'm not perfect as well. I have a temper, but I'm trying to cool down and rationalize and try to think things through before I blow my top. I just want to end this video by saying that, you know, all of us are capable of embracing the muhiba spirit and demonstrating the muhiba spirit in our thoughts, our actions, and our deeds. And I think that we should be sensitive to each other's feelings. I know I feel a lot in this regard, but I'm trying to be better. And we should be courteous and respectful to Malaysians of other races and other religions. You know, who people who may not share our culture, but who certainly share our humanity and our sense of being Malaysian. And I think that, you know, on our part, you know, that whether it be the Malays or the Peranakans, I think we need to make more effort to help people to integrate into this land. Because, yes, I don't like being called a banana. I certainly don't like it when my Malay cousins get mocked as Melayu Malas, but I understand that many people who arrived not so long ago are also feeling resentful. Not just in terms of creature comforts, as I mentioned. It's not just about Bumiputra policies or academic scholarships that they don't get, but feeling resentful in the sense that they feel unwanted, unrooted, like they don't really belong in Nusantara. Yes, I know that the formal name is Malaya, but I call it Nusantara. So I think we should make a bigger effort to try and integrate people. And I am going to try. My New Year's Merdeka resolution of this year is to try my best to avoid using the S word, the word Sinke, which I use as an insult against the Chinese chauvinists, the Chinese ultras, who mock me as a banana and who mock my family as colonial. Basically, I'm going to try not to use that word because I really don't hate you, you know. Even if you're a rabid, foaming in the mouth Chinese ultra who wants my head on a stick and who thinks I'm a watered down, defective, knockoff type of Chinese, I really, really don't hate you. I want you to belong. But sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind, and sometimes you have to deliver bitter medicine to the patient who requires it, and that's why sometimes my words are harsh. But ultimately, I want everybody to belong. Oh, shit. Ah! Oops. This is my grandmother. I think she's saying hello because her photo fell down on my head. She is in her purple kebaya, and this is her yellow car, and this was somewhere in PJ. But yeah, the lady at the back is my great grandmother, and yeah, I'm just saying that I don't hate you, and my grandmother would have loved you. You know, I don't love you yet, all of you Chinese ultras who want my head on a spike, but I want you to belong. And although you will never become Peranakan, not that you want to, but at the same time, I think that we also need to make an effort to try and see things from your point of view. So let me tell you unequivocally that I respect your right to hold your culture, I respect your right to hold your language, just don't force it down my throat, because I have no emotional attachment to China. Like I mentioned several times, my ancestor cut ties with China and has no relation with China. And, you know, but I don't want to forcefully assimilate you into the Peranakan way. I'm not forcefully assimilating you into the Peranakan way. Some people have asked, like, why can't the Chinese become more like the Peranakans? But that's not going to happen because that took 300 over years of evolution. I'm not saying you're unevolved if you're diaspora Chinese. It took 300 years of organic development for that to happen. You can't just become Peranakan overnight. But at the same time, you can be rooted and you can belong. Many have already done it. Okay? Many wonderful people have already done it, such as my students' parents. And to me, I don't even call them Malaysian Chinese. I call them by an even fancier title, Straits Chinese, which means a Chinese born on the Straits. So you might not be Peranakan, but at the same time you will belong. And I think that, well, it's certainly not, I'm certainly not saying that we should bow to the Chinese chauvinists. At the same time, we have to understand where they're coming from and to try and understand their concerns. One of those concerns being that they feel that they're seen as unwanted people. And I think that we should make them feel welcome, while at the same time retaining the right to our own sovereignty. So when I call for integration, I'm not calling for the death of the Chinese culture or the death of Hokkien or Hakka or Cantonese or Mandarin or Teochew or Hainanese or what have you. I believe that everybody has a right to their own culture, just like I have a right to English, which is my lingua franca. In the same way I believe a fish has a right to water, you see. So, I think that that people, no matter how angry, should stop using the pendatang label, and they should see every Malaysian, no matter what their race, as a brother or sister. Even if that person may not share their culture. I can't make that demand of only the Chinese chauvinists who are attacking me. I have to make that demand of every single Malaysian. Malay, Indian, Chinese, Peranakan, Eurasian, Chetty, Orang Asli. I have to make it the same demand of all communities. But ultimately, we are all Malaysian. That is the bond that unites us. And let us remember that unity is our strength. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. And Selamat Merdeka.